Hi, I'm Natalie Graham, and I'm celebrating Indie Business Live to say thank you to the millions of businesses who have been taking part and making a difference. We hope you can support a local business today. So all you have to do to find out more is visit indiebusiness.live, and also you can show some love by simply hashtagging Indie Business Live or Indie Business Love, and show some love this Valentine's to support a small business today. So I had a great time at Indie Business Live in 2020, so much so from the launch that I'm very pleased to be back and part of this event for 2021. And today we have some wonderful stories that are coming from small business heroes and innovators from around the country, and some famous faces too, as well, you'll be pleased to know. So please stay tuned across all of our channels, and don't forget to give us a shout out. But you can celebrate your favorite local business by tagging them in with the hashtag Indie Business Love. And if you're a small business owner as well, then don't be afraid to get in touch. Please say hello, and we will of course make sure that we retweet anything that we see and share your posts. Now, it gives me great privilege to be able to interview a very special guest this afternoon, and I am joined by the one and only Pablo Ohana, who is the founder of the wonderful Apostrophe Talent, and it's great to have you with me today, and I'm really looking forward to meeting Pablo, because of the fact that he is someone who didn't necessarily take the typical path into the industry that he's now in, and he's sort of created his own story, and it's a very interesting story at that. So first and foremost, hello and welcome, Pablo. Great to have you on board, and how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
Very well, thank you. How's life treating you throughout the course of one, now that we've finally entered into 2021, although it may be looking slightly different to what everybody was initially expecting?
Yeah, I was glad to see the end of 2020. It's funny that so many people I've spoken to have sort of been like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, I enjoy my own company. I'm like, well, I don't. That is not me. Like, to be me, I need to be around other people. So it is tough, but there is some solace that that we are getting through it, and there's sort of light at the end of the tunnel.
Hopefully we will be at the end of the tunnel a lot sooner than what we hoped anyway.
Yeah.
And especially, as you've said, you're someone who doesn't necessarily like your own company too much, although I'm sure it's wonderful. Because your world is, of course, PR and media. So in terms of the field and the line of work that you're in, I can imagine that you're ordinarily out and about, mixing with many different types of characters, many different individuals, as well as obviously the responsibilities that you also have for people online.
Yeah, that's actually been one of the strangest things, is having to suddenly drop all of these kind of activities that you did and where you worked. And I always used to say to people, when people say, where do you work? And I'm like, often a train or a bus, or just standing on a street, or standing on a film set, or whatever it is. Like, it's very rare that you just be kind of at your desk. So it has been strange for me to be so sort of stuck in the one place. Although it's funny that I used to kind of complain about that to some degree. So I wonder if now I will go back, like, just get me back on a train. Like, I can't wait to be on a train.
Just working on the move.
Yeah. Well, I always feel like that's really efficient, actually. There's something about going on a train and working, and then being in a different place and having done that work. I feel like you've really kind of accomplished something.
Time management.
I don't know if that's just me. But...
Not a wasted second in the day. Now,
yeah,
as we're talking about, obviously, you working on the move, just to sort of introduce people more so as to what it is that you do, because your journey is pretty awe-inspiring. And I'm sure it will be for a lot of people. But tell us a bit more about Apostrophe, what the business is about, and going sort of right the way back to the beginning, because this sort of materialized, I suppose, back in your teenage years.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny that whenever people ask me about this, I always sort of have to re-engage with it, because it still seems so bizarre. But essentially, I was a huge fan of Billie Piper. I just thought she was wonderfully talented. And this was a while back, so I was sort of 15 at this time. She was had just started Doctor Who. And she was a credible actress, but she still had a lot of baggage from her sort of pop years. And so when I would tell people that I was a huge fan of Billie Piper, it wasn't quite as impressive as it is now. Now she's an Olivier Watering actor and has done so much that people are like, whoa. That wasn't really the case then. And so I ran like a fan site for her. So when you Googled her, my website was the first one that came up. But she had no official online presence, no social media. This was sort of back before social media was as big as it is now. It wasn't as common for every celebrity and every politician and, well, everyone to be on social media. And so I ran kind of the largest online fan site for her. And I decided to go and see one of her plays in London. And so I went down, I saw the play, and then I kind of waited around sort of in the lobby, hoping maybe she would come out, and she did. And I had only met her once before at an autobiography signing years earlier. And so she had no idea who I was. And we sort of got talking, and I said, listen, like, I run this fan site. And she said, oh, that's amazing. I've actually been trying to find the people who run that fan site. And I was like, there you go, that's me. And she was like, I would love to. I know. It's there's some luck in this story, I have to admit. And so she said, listen, I would love to take you for a drink to say thank you for all your work. Like, I really appreciate it. And so we exchanged details, which was, I mean, you know, a 15.
Surreal.
It's still, it's different now, but it's still, when I think back to how I felt in that moment, I don't know how I had the confidence to go through with that, because it still seems so unbelievable that Billie Piper was asking for my phone number and email and things. But we did, and so we set up a date when she was rehearsing for another play, actually. And I thought to myself, this is probably going to be the only time in my life that I get a one-on-one kind of conversation or session with Billie Piper. And there were so many ideas, there were so many things that I thought that she could do and that she would benefit from, and how we could kind of build some sort of relationship. I mean, I wasn't thinking about it strategically. I mean, I was just thinking, I want to have some kind of working relationship, albeit as a fan. And so I went to this, for these drinks with her, it turned out to be lunch in the end. And I sort of presented this kind of document about how, you know, she should get on social media and we should make it all official, and it would be easier for her to kind of get her own version of events out there and to connect with her fans and all sorts of stuff. And like, I went on this, and she sort of was just like, great, yeah, let's do it. And it was bizarre. It was so strange, because you know, it's fine for me to do that now, but I was 15 or 16 or something. So it was, I don't know how I really had the confidence or the courage to do that, but she seemed to really like it, and everything started from there. Because she then grew as an actor, and as I say, now she's pretty world renowned, and she's just been, well, a couple of years ago, she was in New York doing a play there. So now I can just say, oh, well, Billie Piper, people go, oh, right, okay, well, if she trusts you, then help yourself. So it's, I mean, every door opened for me after that. I mean, it was still hard work, but I sort of spotting that gap in her kind of profile, it just changed everything. And from there, I went, I worked with her. I also worked at Titanic Belfast in Northern Ireland, which is a kind of big visitor experience about Titanic. And so I still went on to do lots of other things whilst working with her. But everywhere I went, I was able to say, you know, this is what I spotted and this is how it has worked out. And so one day, my friend dared me to apply for a job working for a Member of Parliament, which was a joke because I knew nothing about, I mean, nothing, absolutely nothing. I couldn't even vote. I was only 17 at the time. But I went along and they were really keen to get someone who could engage with social media, who understood that and could bring kind of constituents and a different audience into their conversation. And so I thought, well, I guess I can just apply what happened with Billie Piper here and see what happens. And it worked. And so those two things, Billie Piper and the Member of Parliament, ended up being this kind of the foundations for what is now Apostrophe Talent, which is essentially PR and media, as you say, talent management and personal management, sort of looking after people's brands and profiles and kind of advising them. And so, like I say, those two kind of things essentially were what built me and my business. And it's it's very strange because I'm not sure. I would love to say that I like planned it and it was really sort of, I thought, right, this is my goal for 10 years time. But I'm not sure it was quite as strategic as that. I think I have always believed in just taking every opportunity you can find.
Because I mean, essentially, from what you just said, the two worlds in terms of Billie Piper and politics, especially back then, you couldn't have more differing scenarios, sort of complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And there's a few sort of interesting points on that I wanted to pick up on. I'm quite keen to find out what sort of got you into, I suppose, technology in the first place, for you to be able to identify and say, you someone that was just growing up and you saw that, you enjoy utilizing things like your Twitter platforms and social media, and you just got it, and that was your sort of thing. Because also, the story in terms of how you've reached to the point that you are today is incredible in itself. But also, I'm quite intrigued as well, because my understanding is that you didn't actually attend university, quite like myself as well, which I think is what a lot of people would automatically expect, especially when now dealing with the likes of venturing into politics. Did you feel the pressure to attend uni at the time, and what do you think that now that you haven't attended uni, what you've learned along the way? I mean, you've already obviously mentioned that you're just someone that sort of sees the day and just take the opportunity. You can clearly see that when an opportunity arises, it's almost a sliding doors moment. Do I or don't I? Things could go very different. But with not attending uni, what do you think that set you in good stead? And like I said, from the technological side of things, how did you get to the point that that you're at now?
Yeah, I mean, the university thing is something that has followed me my entire life, because I was never academic. I was the opposite of my brother, who just flew through GCSEs, flew through A-levels, straight to university, straight to postgraduate, straight to masters, straight to PhD. That is just great for him. But I could never ever connect with my lessons. I really, really struggled. The only sort of aspect of my education that I really engaged with was kind of the creative thing, so drama. And I was fortunate enough actually that even though I wasn't so keen on being on stage, I really enjoyed kind of doing the technical side, so backstage and lights and sound and things. And so I had a great, he wasn't actually my teacher, he was just the person who did the tech there, who agreed to kind of let me sort of work with him and kind of volunteer with him and do bits with him. And I think that sort of began my interest in the more tech side of things, or just in general the backstage, as in not being the person on stage in front of the camera. I mean, that's ironic now, but not being the person who is in the limelight. And so that kind of set my mind to how these platforms could be used by me for other people. Okay. And that was already happening with Billie Piper, in the sense that I was running this fan site, and we had Twitter and Facebook and things like that. But they were nothing to do with me. They were not about what I'd had for dinner that day. It was about what projects Billie Piper was doing. And actually on that, one of the things, interestingly, that I have learned since working with Billie is that what she really appreciated when I was running those platforms is that I had taken into consideration her kind of privacy. And so we would never post anything like pictures of her children, or, it was never pictures of her just going to the shops. I was very clear that it needed to be about her work and her as a public profile, and that we never kind of crossed that line. And I think that it's something I mean, those lines are so blurred now in sort of PR, social media, celebrity politics. I mean, it's so hard to kind of find where you feel comfortable with that, because some people will expose everything, and that's quite difficult for someone like Billie. That's not who she is. She likes to act. She's very good at it. That makes her famous, but she doesn't want to be plastered, you know, all over social media. And so that kind of that sort of interest and exploration around how you can use technology to promote someone in a way that doesn't invade their privacy turned out to actually be an extremely valuable kind of tool for her, that she felt really comfortable saying, okay, I actually trust you to do this, and not accidentally tweet a picture of my kids having dinner or something like that, you know. And on the university thing, that's, like I say, because I just didn't enjoy school, and I didn't do well in it at all. I failed my maths GCSE 4 times, I think. I think I went from a U to an E to a D to a C, and then I stopped. And so
still did well. You got there in the end.
Well, I did, yeah. I mean, eventually, but I mean, university never interested me. I fowed a sort of interest in it when I was forced to by my college, and I have since decided, and I say this a bit perhaps to dismay in the education system, but I think we have a pretty dangerous education model in this country as you come to your later years, because you do get pressure to go to university, and it's not for everyone. If that works for you, that's great. But if it doesn't and you're forced to go, it can be pretty damaging to you, actually. And I remember really suffering from lack of confidence, because everybody, my teachers, lots of friends, I'm afraid to say, and also some of my family, you're not going to go anywhere. You'll never get a job. You'll be stuck doing something you hate for the rest of your life. You'll never earn more than this. You'll never do what you want, because you're not going to go to university. And I was really, really, really pressured to go for a long time, and I really hated it. And the more people pressured me, the more I was determined not to go. And I didn't. And thank God I didn't, because actually in the period that I would have gone to university, I ended up working with Billie Piper, a member of Parliament, a member of European Parliament, worked on the referendum, EU referendum campaign for Remain. You know, I did all these amazing things that I just would never have had the opportunity to do if I'd been at university. So I think it's still something that follows me around, actually. Every now and again, people say, wow, it's amazing that you did everything you've done and went to university. And I'd be like, well, that's because that's not
actually
what happened.
Funny story.
Yeah, funny you should mention that, actually. But yeah, I think it's something that I really want to stress that to anyone that is feeling like they should be going to university, because if you don't think it's for you, you should believe in yourself that it's not for you. And that's okay. You don't have to feel as though that is the only route, because that's how our system's sort of set up to make you feel like that.
So, I mean, that was actually going to be my sort of leads me nicely to my next question with regards to advice that you could potentially give to people in a similar situation who are currently feeling those same kind of pressures. What and then they're at that sort of crossroads where they're not sure what kind of path to take. What do you think it takes to actually, I suppose, start a career or start a business? And what do you think is essential for success, especially whilst now that, of course, we're in the midst of a pandemic, the whole university experience and everything, because you've got some people who do want to go for academic purposes, but then you've also got some people who want to go for the jolly and just to be able to experience the university years, which at the moment is something that they can't really do the way that they would have anticipated, or they've heard all the, you know, the fairy tale stories from the sort of the predecessors before them. So what would be your sort of words of wisdom for them?
Well, I think, you know, I have this phrase which is borrowed from the lady behind me, Hillary Clinton. She said that everybody deserves a chance and a champion. And I say this to my clients, particularly my acting clients, who often, you know, if you're not famous and you've not made it yet, it can feel so just awful. You just don't get any jobs and you're just scrabbling around for anything you can get. And I signed up an actor recently who's so unbelievably talented, who's just been in Das Boot actually on Sky. And he is so talented. And I watched him in Das Boot and I scrambled around to find him online because I was like, if he hasn't got an agent, he needs one now. And he didn't have a UK agent, so now I am. And he really, he struck me immediately as struggling with confidence, which blew my mind because out of everybody in this show, I was like, he's amazing. And I remember feeling the same way about him as I did about Billy Piper. And so I remember thinking, there's something here. And for some reason, someone else hasn't picked this up yet. And I said to him, this exact thing is that you might not feel like it, but everybody deserves a chance and a champion. And you might not feel like you have that, but that's my job. I will be your champion and then I'll get you the chance that you need. And then if that works out, you'll have lots of other champions. You know, if someone like Billy Piper has got, 5 million fans or whatever, so she has 5 million champions, plus her friends and family and all the rest of it. But you really have to, I feel like you have to give that out to people. And I think in the context of me, that was what Billy Piper did for me. She became my champion and she gave me an unbelievable opportunity, which has just transformed my life. And you don't necessarily know that. I didn't know that at the time. I just was excited to work with Billy Piper. I was like, oh my God, this is Billy Piper. But that became my chance and my champion. And I think it sounds so cliche and it's almost making me kind of like cringe to say it. But I really do believe that if you go and find whatever it is that you love doing and that you think you're good at, you will find an opportunity in there, and it doesn't have to be university. And I think that might mean you have to work a lot harder. I mean, I always felt immense pressure to work every single second I could because I knew that I was going to have to work twice as hard without university to prove myself. And so I would just say that you really have to believe that if you found what you're good at and what you believe you're good at, to keep pursuing it, because I don't believe that you sort of get pulled down by this world that is telling you do this or you'll fail, don't do that, otherwise this won't. I just think that it's such an unhelpful narrative, and it is a narrative, it's not the reality. And I'm not saying this because, just meet a celebrity and it'll work out for you, because there was an awful lot of work that went into making that happen. But I just think that you really should not focus on that's the way to go, and if I don't go that way, everything will fall apart. I just think I've seen so many of my friends do that. So many of my friends went to university and dropped out 2, 3, 4 times because they didn't know what they were looking for, because they were just told that's what you have to do. And I just think that's really bad.
Well, as I said, I'm in the University of Life Club. That's what I call it. I didn't go to university for these exact same reasons. I mean, I had all of my friends were going to uni. They're like, Natalie, it's really stupid that you're not going to go to uni. But there was nothing at the time that I wanted to study. I mean, I've grown up in the wonderful world of the music industry, but you didn't have music management courses and that kind of stuff back in my days, which I can actually say. We're talking sort of over 20 odd years ago. So for me, I just thought, well, why am I going to go to university to get myself in debt, spend all that money studying something that I don't really want to study, because, just to live the university life. So I said to my friends, listen, my thing back then was property. I just wanted to get to work so I could get on the property ladder. And I said, I can live the university life when I come and see you guys at the weekend, which is what I did. And I'm glad I went down that path. So yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I mean, fortunately, I think from my side of things, I didn't have the pressure from my parents to say, go to uni. They didn't come from a background academically where they went to university or anything. So it was just like, listen, just do what you want to do. Just make sure that whatever you do, you just apply yourself as best you can, so you can always look back and say that I was going
to say exactly that. You have to, or certainly in my case, you have to just allow yourself to be consumed by it. If you're not going to go down this route that is going to set you up for life, or whatever it is that they sell you at these open days, you have to just allow yourself to be like, right, I've chosen this path, I've chosen it because I want to do it, and therefore you have to totally commit yourself to it. And I mean, really, like, you have to be prepared that you are going to work harder You'll have much tougher interviews when you go for jobs, or if you're setting, yourself up for
Yeah.
clients. They will want to know, well, why didn't you go? Because that is usual. And you have to be prepared to answer that, because that will ring alarm bells. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality. People will be a bit like, why didn't he go? Like, what happened here that didn't quite kind of connect? So I think that's a really important point, actually, that I forgot to say, because I think it's just, you do have to really just go for it. And for some people it will work. For some people, university will work. And for my brother, for example, he's having the time of his life, and that's great. But you have to recognize if you're that person or not. And I think that's where we really fail in education, is not actually looking at each individual and saying, do you know what, this person is probably going to do better. Go and volunteer somewhere. Go and get an apprenticeship or an internship, or just go and do something a bit different. There are so many things out there that don't require you to go to university. And actually, as you were saying about, this university of life thing, it's funny that when I moved into politics, I was the only one who didn't have a degree. And it was a given that you had one, even though I didn't. And it amazed me time after time after time, when a real life crisis situation in particular came up, they would struggle to handle it. And this is not me sort of putting down any of my colleagues or friends, but I noticed on many occasions that they would really start to panic. But because I'd already kind of been through so much, and you just learn as you go through, like, oh crap, I need to deal with a situation now. You just become a lot more in tune with it, and you become a lot more relaxed around those situations. And I think that shouldn't be taken for granted. Just like I say, going for an internship or volunteering somewhere, you will learn so much just applying yourself to whatever it is for that period of time. And that real life experience for me, has been just immeasurably valuable.
100%. Well, just coming off education and university, because let's talk more about apostrophe talent and what it is that you do, because I can completely appreciate that things must be very, very different in the current circumstances at the moment, as we mentioned at the start of the interview. But talk us through a little bit more about what you were doing sort of prior to the pandemic.
Yeah, so just before it all kicked off in 2020, I had planned to expand quite a lot this year, well, over 2020 into 2021. And so I was expanding my sort of political PR sort of area. So I was looking after a lot more politicians and councillors across the UK. And I had planned to focus on bringing in a more diverse range of actors, clients as well. That did become somewhat derailed, because not only did the entertainment industry collapse, but all the elections were cancelled. So those two areas sort of struggled. But there's, not to kind of downplay the severity of what happened, because actually it was a tough year, but this is part of that thing of, just applying yourself wholly.
Yeah, this is where your crisis management skill kicked in.
Exactly. Think, well, there's nothing I can do to fix this pandemic. I'm doing my bit. I wear a mask. I stay at home, all that sort of stuff. But you have to think, well, how am I going to get the best out of this situation? Well, actually, everyone's working from home. So suddenly, picking up a client on the other side of the country, or even outside the country, is now fine. There was a period of time when, because I'm based in Manchester, that people were like, oh, but it's just Westminster's in London, and like, oh, but we're filming in London, and oh, but that doesn't happen now. I immediately picked up a load of clients in like Bath and Kent, because they were like, well, we're all working from home. Why does it matter where you are? So that's an example of really kind of taking what is really not an ideal scenario and finding some way to kind of turn that around. My hope still is I'm hoping to take on an apprentice, because obviously with what I've been through, I think I really want to kind of give someone else that opportunity to see what can be done, and how, other opportunities and other avenues into this.
So at the moment, you're doing all of this single-handedly. This is all just, you're a one-man team.
Yes, I'm a one-man team with, I do occasionally kind of reach out to sort of freelancers and things like that, but primarily it is just me. And that has sort of been intentional, because I've kind of been at that point where there is so much work for me to do, and I get very sort of precious because that you work for yourself, you can pick who you work with.
Yeah.
So you pick people you really like and you care about. And so the idea of suddenly being like, oh, actually, I'm just gonna like hand you over.
Yeah.
Suddenly that's quite a difficult thing to do.
Would you say they're more passion projects?
Yeah, and this, yeah, you find what you care about. And I didn't think I would ever care about politics, and then I found myself crying over Hillary Clinton, or like really emotionally involved in my clients. And I worked with some really hardworking MPs who lost their seats in various general elections, and it's so tough. But you realize in that moment, well, that's what you care about. And again, it goes back to that finding something that if you're so involved that you're going to cry over someone else losing their job, you really care about it,
Yeah.
And like you say, it's essentially a passion project then. So I mean, that's my hope is to expand and kind of bring on some kind of full-time people rather than kind of just hoarding all my clients to myself. So that's sort of my plan.
That's kind of semi-answered some of the next question I was going to ask, just in terms of how have you adapted, as you've said, in the current situation, but also as well, I think from what you've said, people don't necessarily realize how hard it can actually be as a sort of a business owner, let alone if you're in the creative industry as well. And the strain, not sort of pandemic aside, and I suppose there's almost the sacrifices that people have to make as business owners, to when everybody else wants to sort of, when they can, be out and about and enjoying themselves. It's just been sort of having the discipline to, I suppose, sit there and say, listen, I really love to do that, but I can't right now because I've got X, Y, and Z to deal with. So is that something that you found as you've sort of evolved over the last few years?
Yeah, it's tough. And actually working for yourself, everyone has this idea, and actually, I don't know, maybe it's changed because of working from home, but everyone has this idea that working for yourself and working from your office or from home is really great. And it is, but it can also be very isolating, and it can be very lonely because you don't have an office of people to bounce ideas off, or even just to go and have a chat with when you've got spare few minutes. So you really have to apply yourself, and you really have to just think. I often had to just remind myself, you chose to do this. No one made you go and work for yourself. Like, you chose to do this. So now you need to make it work. And I think actually one of the probably the best piece of advice I ever got given, and I say this to my friend who's also starting her own business. I was working in full-time employment in the civil service, working on the Think road safety campaigns, when I was still working freelance, doing kind of stuff for Billy, doing stuff for other clients and all sorts of other things. And it was unmanageable. I was just exhausted 24/7. And I spoke to someone who runs a very successful communications agency. And he said to me, you need to leave full-time employment and totally apply yourself, because for as long as you are in full-time employment and you've got a comfortable job in the civil service, you'll never lose your job. You're being paid lots, particularly for someone who hasn't been to university. You will never fully apply yourself to building your business and your clients, because you don't need to, because you've got the money, you've got a job, and you don't.
There's a safety net.
Exactly. And he said, the second you leave that job, you'll be like, oh God, I've got to make this work. And that's kind of, it's the same thing now, is that I don't have anything else to fall back on. If I don't make this work, I don't have any income. Yeah. So whilst it can be sort of isolating and lonely, you do have to just think, this is the life I chose to lead. Now I've got to make it work. But
essentially, you've got to be your own champion.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and to be fair, people give that back to you. I mean, once you I personally find, particularly with the people I work with, and which is the advantage of working for yourself, that you can say, I like this person, I think they're talented, or I think they're doing good stuff, that's why I'm going to work with them. They will give it back to you. And, you know, I had a call from Joachim, who is the actor from Das Boot, who said to me, I just wanted to say, like, I really like you. I feel like, you know, you're more than just my agent, like you're actually a friend now because of some advice I've given to him. And that's that, you know, that becomes a two-way thing. Yeah. He sort of says, oh, you know, thank you so much for getting me this audition or whatever. And that's all you really need. You think, oh, do you know what? That may be all I did today, because the rest of the day I was just banging my head against emails or whatever. But at least something good came out of it. And it makes, you know, those kinds of things keep the motivation going when it can be pretty grueling.
Well, I mean, when I say in terms of your own champion, it's at those times, like you said, when you've got no one else in the office with you to sort of bounce off, and you're just sitting there and you've got to try and think, right, okay, do I just throw the towel in? Have I made the right decision? Oh my gosh, what am I doing? And then you've just got to just find it from somewhere to think, no,
which is totally normal.
For a reason. Yeah,
like all of that is totally normal. Like no one should ever be like, well, oh God, I'm the only person ever to have struggled with this. Like, no. There is, you know, everyone has the same thing.
This is normal.
Exactly.
Talking
and I think
to yourself moments and trying to relay conversations. Exactly. Right, I'm about to make this call.
Yeah, like having really in-depth conversations about, like, should I have dinner at 3:30 p.m? Is that logical? I only had breakfast about half an hour ago. Like, you know, those kinds of things are just every day. But they, you know, it is a different way of working, and you know, presumably, you know, the people watching this will have on some level decided to make that jump or planning to. And for all the downsides, there are just so many upsides and so many bonuses that make it just so worthwhile and so rewarding as well.
Well, I have to say, I was really looking forward to speaking with you today, because obviously I did my little bits of research and sort of dug around in the background to find out more about you, and I found you inspiring anyway. You're also someone that at some stage I'm probably going to be coming to have a separate conversation with you at another point regardless, but I just think your positivity, your tenacity, clearly the persistence and everything that you've had as well, as I've mentioned, is beyond inspiring. And you've mentioned that, you know, you were in the process of looking to grow in 2020. Yeah. That was obviously sort of, I say, put on hold to a certain extent, but again, geographically now there's sort of less constraints because everybody's been able to work from home. But post-COVID, what are you actually most sort of optimistic about with regards to your path and your journey forward?
I'm actually pretty optimistic about most things. I think I think once this kind of situation resolves itself, which it will do, I think. Yeah, I mean, as you know, you have to believe that it will, because otherwise, what else do you do? But no, I mean, it will be resolved at some point, and I think. I mean, I look forward to being able to really engage with people face to face. I think it makes a huge difference when you can speak to people in person. I unfortunately, a part of what I do at Apostrophe Talent is I have a social mission, I call it, which is basically a part of the business which gives out either free or heavily discounted support to causes I believe in. So environmental stuff or creative stuff, or and a big part of it is political. And so I support political parties across Europe that I believe in. So it could be D66 in the Netherlands or the Democrats in America. And that was one of the things I missed out on in 2020, is that I had planned and I'd set up to go and work on Joe Biden's campaign. And to help kind of get rid of Donald Trump. And I had been in 2018 and I'd helped the Democrats with their midterm elections, and it had been so much fun and such a great experience. So I look forward to being able to do things like that again. I think that's, I'm optimistic that things are moving in the right way, that there are opportunities will come back, even though it's been tough. And really getting back into just seeing people and making things work, because ultimately, I'm a very social person, and so I am desperately looking forward to being able to work with people and see people and get back on campaigns, get back on filming sets, which will happen, but you know, you have to hold in there, hang in there even.
I can sense the social butterfly in you from from the start of the interview. Again, I think when you're a people person, then you can't get away from that, and especially when it comes to things like whether it's a working lunch and so on and so forth, it creates a much more sort of relaxed environment, and I think it allows people to let their guard down ever so slightly, so you get a much more real sense of the people that you're then doing business with, and it just, for me anyway, personally, it just helps things to flow that much more easily. But my final question to you is, have you, I mean, you mentioned with the gentleman from the actor from Das Boot, that you were like, right, sort of doing your research and finding out, and obviously we know about your history with regards to Billie Piper and being a fan, but the people that you've managed to, the clients, I should say, that you've managed to attain along the way, has this been sort of organic growth for you, that you've just sort of sought out the people that you've wanted to work with, or has it been a little bit of both, where there's been recommendations off the back of people like your Billie Pipers and your certain MPs that said, listen, if you want to get someone involved, then I know the man for the job. You need to speak to Pablo.
Yes. And I think actually this is a point I forgot to say before, is that particularly in PR, but I think perhaps this works across many sectors as well, I personally don't think you should be promoting yourself, which I recognize, again, is ironic given that I'm sitting here doing this interview. But what I have found has worked the best is that if you really push your clients and you really believe in them and they get what they need, whether it's a job for an actor or whether it's a piece of press for a politician, people will start to notice that. And one of the things that changed kind of my outlook on the political aspect was I decided once I went to work in politics, and at the time I was working for the Liberal Democrats, it was a really tough time. The party had just come out of coalition. We'd had a dreadful election in 2015. And I thought, I'm just going to work as hard as I can for this one politician that I was working with and see what happens. And I completely applied myself. And he ended up getting more press coverage in the year of 2016 after he lost his seat as MP, but before he gained his seat as a councillor. In that year, when he was just an average person, so he was not elected to any office, he was a former MP running for council the following year, he got more press coverage because I decided to just throw everything at it. And what happened there is that people kept being like, how the hell is this guy getting so much press coverage? I don't understand what's happening. And so people would go to him and be like, what are you doing? And he'd be like, it's this guy. And that's, I think, is really important, because I was not sitting there being like, oh, I've got another piece of coverage. Oh, like, aren't I great? Like, I'm going to post everything everywhere and me. Like that, I don't think that works personally. Certainly not me. I don't really, like I say, I don't want to be the person in the limelight, really. And so when your clients get a better deal than everybody else, people will start to be like, what's happening that I can get in on here? So that's been a big part of it, is that people will say, listen, this is what's happening and this is the guy you need to speak to. But also, you make connections, and through Billie, I ended up working with Kate Garraway as well, who's just brilliant, and through her met other people as well, actually. And through Billie, I picked up a charity that she really cared about, which was about engaging children with drama and arts, which obviously was kind of chimed with me. But so you end up picking up those kind of things. And then through the charity, I ended up working with Hugh Bonneville as well, which was
awesome.
Yeah. Bonneville. And so it's been a bit of both. You have to find the opportunities, because as a self-employed or freelancer or whatever it is, you're not going to have that regular income if you don't have certain things in line, and you do have to kind of plan how your finances are going to work to some degree. But I think for me, the biggest thing has just been making sure that whoever I work for, it doesn't matter whether it was a councillor, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, an Olivier Award-winning actor, an actor who's just got his first ever job ever, as long as you totally consume yourself with whatever you have to do and make sure that they get the best deal, people will spot that, because your efforts will pay off and people will start to wonder what's going on. So that, I think, has been kind of my very diluted but slightly winning formula of just really making sure it doesn't matter who it is. And I always say that people will know when they're getting a kind of half-assed treatment. And so if you completely commit yourself to it, they will know that that's what's happening, and they will know that they're getting, you know, very good value out of you. But in turn, those people know people who will start to be like, I want in on this. So yeah,
I think it's a perfect example of your work quite clearly just ends up speaking for itself, which is all that you can ask for at the end of the day. And Pablo, I've got to say thank you, because like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today. I've just, when I have my little lulls, you know, and occasionally you'll come across something and think, do you know what, they've just given me the extra little boost that I needed. Just think, no, it's worth to just keep pushing on. And I mean, in terms of, you're a shining example of when it comes to sort of the hard work, and you've demonstrated that, as I've mentioned before, the persistence and the resilience that you've had has helped you to get to the point that you are now. And I just think that you've for someone to be able to, anyone to be able to create their own opportunities is always a fantastic thing to see. But especially the sort of the story that you've taken us on, and the journey from where you first began to where you are now. And it still feels, for me personally, I'm sure for the people at home as well who are watching, that you are still in the very early phases of what you're setting out to achieve. So I can only imagine that from here it's going to be onwards and upwards, just significantly for you. And I actually can't wait to see your journey as you flourish, and the more and more people that you take under your wing, and at the same time end up taking you under theirs, as I'm sure will happen. It's it's brilliant. And I think it's more importantly as well, especially for any of the youngsters who are watching today, not just sort of the established business owners, but people who are looking and sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do what I wanted to do in the midst of a pandemic? Is it even possible? I think you've quite clearly shown to many of us that it's more than doable. And like I said, I can't wait to see your journey and how it progresses as we navigate around whatever is to become the new norm. As much as it pains me to use that phrase, it's something that's out there. So it's been so brilliant to speak to you, Pablo. It really has. And not just from myself, but as well from everybody at Indie Business Live. Then we wish you nothing but great success for yourself personally, and of course for Apostrophe Talents. And just wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you. It's been great to be here. Thank you.